shout out to Jeff Booth, who's been a guest on a few podcasts of mine, but this idea of like forever deflation brings abundance and therefore solves all the problems. And actually had a really interesting critique of that with not just like, oh, I'm not sure if that's correct, but then a great example as to how an economy functions and essentially goes bankrupt when there isn't an elastic monetary layer on top. Now, it's not very easy to do without your slides, I admit, but just at a very high level, could you talk us through why you think a pure deflationary currency without an elastic layer above would really struggle as it gets to like second and third kind of derivations of the initial trade?
Yeah. We only have 1 hour, right?
Yeah, we do. Sorry, Hubertus.
So let's take it in steps. Yeah. What needs to be extremely precise. If you read Jeff's book, and I did,
yeah, I have, yeah.
He really only comes to the monetary question almost as a by note in the very end of the book. Yeah. So most of his book, he doesn't actually write about monetary phenomena. It's not his original topic. His topic, and he does that really well. So we also had him as a guest at the Hayek Institute remote once to debate this. Is he shows very nicely how technology can improve productivity, get goods cheaper, better, and all these things. Yeah? The confusion starts when we call this deflation. Because deflation is always and everywhere a monetary problem. It's a slight modification of another saying. Same is true for inflation, by the way. Friedman said that. So when goods get cheaper, those prices tell us something. Yeah, that we can use this product more, that it's a good thing. Whereas a deflation doesn't mean that the goods get cheaper. It just means that the money gets more expensive, which is an entirely different thing, although it expresses in exactly the same way. Prices would be lower. Yeah, do I make sense?
Yes, you do.
Yeah.
And
so
it's also that differentiation as money as a good. You know, a lot of people don't even really understand that money is a good itself, and that's a very important fact as well. Okay.
When Jeff talks about deflation, what he means is falling prices for goods, at least for goods, and we need to be aware of that, of some categories. Other goods will get more expensive. Yeah, like land, as we grow more of us, land in Byron Bay, where I understand you right now, is getting more expensive because it's scarce. Everybody wants to live near the ocean. Of course, there's scarcity. It's always going to be there. So it's really just an exchange between stuff which gets cheaper and stuff which gets more expensive because the supply is limited. Yeah, it's a very human work will get more expensive. We all earn much more than we did at the turn of the century. Why? Because work is getting more expensive. Yeah, personal services. So it's on the good side, it's very differentiated. On the money side, to Keynesians, it looks like it's more universal. So the value of money rises, therefore the prices go down, deflation. But that's also not true, because even that deflation reaches you in a kind of reverse Cantillon effect to those who those products which are first affected by the money which people don't spend, which they save, which they hoard and hold instead of spending it for the goods which were produced for it. So that's the difficulty here, distinguishing between falling prices of goods because of better, cheaper production of goods, or falling prices because of undersupply of money. And here's the problem. Now, Bitcoin has a fixed supply, the base money, which is a good thing. Yeah, it's important to understand that it's a good thing, and we call it outside money. And then there is the money which is actually needed by trade and industry, because trade and industry always runs on money substitutes, which could be either credit money, which is good, the proper stuff, or it could be fiduciary media, which is bad. Credit money is backed by proof of work. Yeah, somebody has already produced goods. which they put into the trade and production cycle for other businesses to work with and ultimately to sell to the consumer. Or it could be fiduciary media issued against thin air, government bonds, Lombard of stocks, even money issued against cryptocurrency or even Bitcoin is fiduciary media by the Austrian diction. So it's a bad thing. It will inflate the fiat system. So yeah, that's the reason and so to close it, whenever we have monetary deflation, meaning there's not enough money for people to sell their goods, to pay their workers, those are terrible, terrible parts of the human history. It started first time around the 1400s, 1465, with the so-called Great Bullion Crisis, where people in Europe didn't have enough gold to pay for commodities, for grain, for milk, for anything. So the farmers couldn't sell the stuff. The harvest rotted on the fields. The cows, I don't know how you call it in English, but they bowed for pain because nobody milked them because there were no farmhands to pay. There was hunger epidemics in Europe at the time. And despite there being cows, despite there being milk, despite there being grain, it rotted on the field because there was no medium exchange, because medium of exchange was just gold, and progress was too fast to keep up with that.
Wow.
So people starved, and that was probably the most comparable deflation to what would happen with Bitcoin if there wasn't already the fiat system, which doesn't have that, and therefore the economy still works on fiat, and we're not making progress on that. So that's so to say monetary deflation in a pure form. And later there were government-induced monetary deflations, like the Great Depression of the 1930s, when central banks, central planners, which, as you know, Austrians strictly warn against, interfered, artificially raised interest rates to rates where businesses couldn't afford any money anymore. And the same thing happened. You get a so-called deflationary spiral, where the marginal businesses drop out because they can't afford the interest, where indebted businesses drop out because they kind of relied on credit being normally available, but it's not because government interfered. And so the business world goes into a downward spiral where productive capacity disappears, unemployment rises, hardship, misery. We all know the 1930s. So that's monetary deflation, as opposed to better prices for certain goods which profit from productivity improvements.
And Hubertus, what is infinitely fascinating for me as a non-economist, but as someone who has capital and is an investor and is very keen to keep their capital, right? I've made bad investments and I lost it, and we as investors get paid for our decision making. And like always, I find these moments so fascinating in that I'm getting information for the first time that helps me see the world in a superior way to before. And that's literally it, right? That's the game. If you can get this information and it helps you to see what's going on better than anyone else, you can make better informed decisions.
Absolutely, yes.